And a top focus on WION at this hour. Battle for the city of Bakhmut, the epicenter of the Russia-Ukraine war, has been the bloodiest and the longest since the war began in February 2022, with balance swinging in favor of Moscow and Kiev from time to time. In the recent development, Ukrainian president has claimed that Bakhmut has not fallen into the hands of Russia at the G7 summit in Hiroshima. Listen in.
Сьогодні вони виконують дуже важливе завдання. Сьогодні вони знаходяться в Бахмуті. В яких точках ділитися не буду, але це говорить про те, що Бахмут не охоплений на сьогодні Російською Федерацією. Ніяких двох або трьох тлумачень цьому не може бути.
Заяви Пригожина, як завжди, не відповідають дійсності. Наші підрозділи утримують ряд будівель і мають ряд фортифікаційних споруд на південно-західній частині міста.
The counterclaim comes after Yevgeny Prigozhin, who is the head of Russia's private militia, the Wagner group, claimed that the eastern city of Bakhmut has been captured by Russia. The Russian army late on Saturday echoed the claims made by the Wagner group. It credited the capture to the mercenary group along with cooperation of its southern unit. Russian President Vladimir Putin has congratulated the Wagner group as well as the National Army over the claimed capture. Prigozhin had released a video which showed the Wagner fighters waving Russian and Wagner flags. The city had been the focal point of the war for months, and it had witnessed the bloodiest battles in the 15-month-old war. The city was of symbolic importance as it represented Ukraine's resistance to Russian aggression. Incidentally, the capture coincides with the first anniversary of Russia's capture of Mariupol on 20th of May 2022. The city in southeastern Ukraine was captured by the Russian forces. The takeover marked the biggest victory for Moscow at the time when the war was just 3 months old. Last year in October, the city was formally annexed by Russia along with 3 other regions. Russian President Vladimir Putin had then signed a law to recognize them as a part of Russia's territory. And joining us live from Moscow, we have journalist and political analyst Fred Weir on the show. Thank you so much for joining us on WION, Mr. Fred. Right, now, after 15 months of the ongoing war in Ukraine, the embattled city of Bakhmut has finally fallen. This is a major breakthrough for the Russian troops. Do you think that the capture will act as a turning point in the ongoing war in Ukraine?
I think it's too soon to say. Turning points are always clear in hindsight, but this battle was, really long, hard, grinding. Tens of thousands of men died on both sides. It's clear, and it's something like Stalingrad in its depth, intensity, and protracted nature. And Stalingrad, as we now know, was a turning point. At least after that, the Germans never won a major victory. But we don't know about this war. The Ukrainians are preparing a big counteroffensive, they say, and it may hit any day, and the tide may turn. We just don't know. But it can be said, I think, that in this contest, in this ferocious battle that lasted many months, a lot of things got decided, and one of them is that the Russians have the will, the force, and the staying power to fight these kind of battles against Ukraine, and here they have clearly won. I'm not in a position to contradict President Zelensky, but we've been following this for months on Telegram channels, like almost block by block, blow by blow. It's clear that the Russians evicted the last Ukrainians from Bakhmut yesterday. They're nearby, and they're still fighting, but this particular battle appears to be over, and the Russians won.
Right, Mr. Fred, you speak of how the Russian troops have evicted Ukrainian troops from Bakhmut. Now, but just shifting focus, that the Ukrainian president, while holding the bilaterals with Biden, said that there is nothing left in Bakhmut. But he later clarified that Ukraine is still fighting for the control of Bakhmut. Difficult to know really how to gauge what Kyiv wants to say about Bakhmut right now.
I think it's incredibly embarrassing for him. At this moment, he's there at the G7. This is a really big moment politically and diplomatically. So bad news from the battlefront can't be welcome. I think that's all it is. I'm pretty sure that in the next few days, the dust will settle and it will be clear that the Russians did seize the last blocks. It was really just a few blocks of housing in western Bakhmut that were holding out until yesterday. So and the Ukrainians have, I mean, we have video confirmation. Yevgeny Prigozhin, the head of the Wagners, doesn't make announcements like that lightly. He can say a lot of things, and he's a very bombastic fellow, but he doesn't claim victory without solid evidence. So I think we can consider this done and down.
Right, Mr. Fred. Now, talking about the G7 summit, which you just mentioned, the war in Ukraine also dominated the talks during the G7 summit. In the latest, Biden, during his latest presser, which just happened a short while ago, he clearly blamed Russia for its war in Ukraine. How do you gauge these statements coming from Hiroshima?
Well, no, this is exactly what we would have predicted. It's exactly the situation that has been between Russia and the West, especially the G7 countries, since February of last year. The allies, or whatever you want to call them, the G7, have been doubling down in their support for Ukraine, and there was absolutely no question that they were going to welcome Zelensky with open arms and offer him more support. They did. He now will get these F-16 fighter planes, which were refused to him before. So all in all, it's a diplomatic triumph for Zelensky there at the G7. And so the news from Bakhmut is sort of set against that, but it doesn't change anything.
Right, Mr. Fred, my last question to you before we let you go. Now, the Battle of Bakhmut also highlighted an extraordinary rift among the Russian forces, the tension between Prigozhin and the Russian forces. How do you tell us more on that?
Well, first of all, Prigozhin is a bit of a drama queen. He is clearly engaged in a power struggle with the defense ministry, and it's not just over influence and credit for the fighting, it's over resources like ammunition and equipment and support on his flanks. Like he had issues which, being not a soldier, not part of the chain of command, he was free to take to the public, and he did very openly and bitterly. But I think it's my opinion that people are reading a bit too much into that. They think there is a schism between Wagner's and Prigozhin and the Russian establishment, and doesn't seem to be the case. The Wagners are part of the Russian establishment, even if they squabble departmentally with the defense ministry. It's clear that Putin, the president, tolerates this and even maybe finds it useful for his own purposes.
Right, Mr. Fred, we'll of course have to wait and watch and see how the capture of Bakhmut by the Russian troops determines the ongoing war. But thank you so much for joining us on WION and sharing your insights with us on this. Thanks very much.
Thank you.